CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.
Before we get started, I just want to give a special thank you and shout out to our podcast network, Certain POV. You can find us and all their other awesome shows at certainpov.com. That's CERTAINPOV.com.
Are you tired of watching your beloved characters being tortured by careless authors?
Are you sick of feeling like they could have swapped out all of the painful action and the plot would remain untouched? Subscribe to Books That Burn, the fortnightly book review podcast focusing on fictional depictions of trauma.
We assume that the characters' reactions are reasonable and focus on how badly or well they were served by their authors.
Join us for our minor character spotlights, main character discussions, and favorite non-traumatic things in the dark books we love.
Find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of How the Fuck, the talk show turned podcast where we chat with folks who know what the fuck they're doing and ask them how the fuck they got there. I'm your host, Katie DeMatteis.
I'm also your host, Ben Martin Mooney.
And I'm your thirdliest host, Zeki Alakaya.
So, today we are joined by Emily Webster, born Emily Schulman, a former child actress and commercial agent, and current acting instructor. She's known for her role as next-door neighbor Harriet Brindle in the sitcom Small Wonder and Tiffany Honigman in Troop Beverly Hills. Additional credits include Finders Keepers, Hotel, Mr. Belvedere, ALF, and The Wonder Years. As an agent, she worked for Acme Talent in Los Angeles and represented a wide variety of commercial clients.
So, Emily, how the fuck?
How the fuck?
How the fuck did you get here?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining
And
us.
I love,
Also-
Ben, that you said ALF.
I was gonna say, Ben, it's Alf.
I'm like, it's just Alf.
It's Alf.
You can't I'll capitalize it and not expect me to read. Okay. Well, Alf.
Alf was an alien life form. And it was a really, really horrible sitcom with a puppet, and he ate cats. Do you remember Alf?
I remember Alf.
Now that you
I
mention
remember
it, I
Alf.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's capitalized yet again to represent the alien life form. So clever they were in the late 80s.
But yeah, Emily, how the fuck? How did you get here? What's your elevator pitch life story?
Well, as you said, I started out as a child actor, and I did that from before I can even remember. I was still in diapers. I had parents who had ambitions to put their children in the business. And actually, the genesis of how we got into show business is interesting. My older brother had tested very high on an IQ test, extremely high. He was like a child genius, a child prodigy when he was 4 years old. And
Wow.
he had bright red hair and a face full of freckles. And a local talk show came to interview him and asked him a bunch of questions. And he was incredibly precocious. And talent agents swooped in and found my parents, who were incredibly vulnerable and impressionable and already sort of had aspirations to be wealthy in LA, glitterati. And so they really caught my young parents at a great time. And they said, oh, you should put your kid in the business. With a face like that, he could make tons and tons of money. And my parents, my dad was actually a dentist. I think he was actually just starting his own practice. But they also were doing a very LA thing where they were buying property and trying to flip it. And they had an avarice for mercenary concerns and materialistic goods. So they were just like prime candidates for getting into the business. And so they did that with my older brother. And then there ended up being 6 of us children. And they tried to put us all in the industry. My older brother did a bunch of stuff. And then he opted out. And then my sister, who was right after my brother, she's actually like the real talent of the family. But she wanted a more mainstream life. And then I was the third, and I ended up sticking. I did commercials and then landed some other jobs that were more long term. And so I became like the central kid actor of the family. And I did that until the day I turned 18, when I felt that I had the autonomy and ownership of my own life and said, what the fuck? I'm leaving this business. And I did. But before then, I had interned at my own talent agent's office. And I had recognized that though I had no desire whatsoever to ever be on camera, which is why I'm not on camera right now, that I loved nothing more than supporting artists. And so I had done a work study program where I went to professional children's school in New York City. And I went for 2 days a week on Monday, Tuesday. And then the rest of the week I worked, did an internship at my my own agent's office. So the day I turned 18, I left the industry as an actor, and I went and I started in the mailroom at a talent agency in LA, and worked my way up. And I worked there, and that was really incredible and super fulfilling, and I loved every second of it. And then I had my second child and realized it wasn't quite sustainable to have an all-consuming career as a talent agent and be a mom. And then my husband and I relocated to the East Coast, where now I am an acting coach and theater director.
Whoa, that's a
That's
pitch.
it, guys. Good night.
All right, yeah, we
That's our
got everything
episode.
answered. Perfect. So for our audio only people, there are three of us hosts, all have our video on, and Emily, you do not. So I guess you mentioned it very briefly there, but let's start by kind of like addressing the elephant in the room. Um, Emily, your camera's turned off. Why do you prefer to appear publicly in an audio form whenever, the rest of the world is expecting video all the time, kind of a thing?
Well, thank you for asking. I mean, simply put, I love talking and I love conversation, but I'm much more comfortable when it is done without it being about an image or about the way that I look, which is definitely tied into, the word trauma is so hackneyed at this point, but I did not love being a kid actor. I think that at the best case scenario, it is child labor, and worst case scenario, and I know this is dangerous language, but I think it's child abuse. And again, there's a big spectrum of experiences, but I was tortured as a kid with the way that I looked and my appearance. And I made my parents a lot of money by playing a character that was called fat and ugly and was teased mercilessly, and then had the pressure of transforming myself into something that I was not, and tried to be, every single role I ever did, I had the scene where I looked in the mirror and was like, Mama, Mama, I am a pretty girl. Like every single role I ever did. Um, and so, now everybody is a kid actor because everybody has Snapchat and Instagram, and everybody is dogged by having to show themselves. But for me, it was a really unique experience that my siblings, and I'm from a big loving family with 6 kids, they all had an anonymity about them. And I was not at all comfortable with um, my persona, my kid actor persona. I mean, I literally was like the ugly fat neighbor for 4 or 5 years. And I did come out of that, and I'm not like a horribly insecure person. On the contrary, I'm all about promoting. I mean, now it's like all this trendy like body positivity and all that stuff, and that's not even my bag. I just want to spread good energy, and I'm most free and comfortable doing so when it's not locked into the way that I look. I don't look
Yeah.
like the, Elephant Man or anything like that, but
No, of course.
Beautiful, Emily.
No, but I can imagine that's like it's very grating for, the first 18 years of your life, or up to 18 years of your life, and then finally being able, like you said, to get out of there. That must have been extremely liberating.
It was, and it still is. One of my side hustles that I've been doing for a really long time is I teach these spin classes, and not to make this a therapy session, but so just this morning, my daughter and I were teaching this spin class to, which is another tangent, but I teach theater at a therapeutic boarding school, and I had the whole room packed and everyone was singing and it was so incredible. But it wasn't lost on me that part of the reason that everybody felt so liberated and free and connected to their bodies is because it's in a pitch black room with no mirrors and it's just this pumping music. And I think it's really important not to say that we shouldn't take pride in the way we look. And that's a whole other conversation. And everybody's beautiful and I get it. But there's a real freedom when you can just be in your body or in your voice or in your story without it being attached to the way that you look. And I'm all about promoting that. And I just had one of these like come to Jesus moments just this morning with that. And so, yeah, just for me personally, I can be so much freer if it's not attached to an image. And that liberation I found at 18 is something that I still carry with me at 46.
I love that.
That's really
Yeah.
So not to like change gears too much, because I think that that's so important, and I love that about you. And also I think that there's something really special about being able to take back something that you didn't have a choice in for so long and be able to say, actually, like, I don't want to be seen. I want to be able to share other things about myself. But I am curious, what has been your favorite project you've worked on and why? And this can be either or both as an actress or an agent.
Well, my favorite project that I worked on as an actress is coincidentally the project that nobody's ever heard of, but it was this movie called Caddy Woodlawn.
I've
And
heard
it
of
was-
it.
Yay! It was based on, like a Newbery Award-winning novel called Caddy Woodlawn, and it's very Little House on the Prairie. First of all, the journey to getting the part was really exhaustive and extensive, and so I felt really proud of the fact that I got the role. And it was definitely about breaking free from the 80s sitcom persona that I had, and it was like a Disney movie of the week. I mean, the other funny thing about it, it was a DCOM, a Disney Channel original movie, but before they became like these mass sensations. But so I went through this.
You were so close to being a Disney Channel star, Emily.
So close. I went through this exhaustive interview process and I got the part, and it was so incredible. And then it kind of all ties together because it was such a great role, because I wore braids and I wore these, incredible like prairie girl dresses, and they didn't even have to put makeup on me. I got to just be like this natural hillbilly girl. So I wasn't like had all this foundation on, because I grew up on like a sitcom set. And I had to learn how to ride horses. And I really was like this girl in a bubble, sheltered, grew up on a soundstage. So I got to do all these rough and tumble, like real kid experiences through the role of Caddy Woodlawn. And it was also a really nurturing set. And I mean, I was number one on the call sheet, which I will never be again and never was before. So it was this very special experience. And I felt really taken care of. And that was lovely. And also it was a worthy story that we were telling. It was like this historical story of this girl who stopped a Native American massacre. And so all the boxes were checked. Like, it was a beautiful environment on the set. It wasn't about me being a puppet. I was telling what felt like an important story. And it was really lovely. And of course, it's totally obscure, and I don't think you can even like find it on YouTube. And no, I think once in my entire life, somebody came up to me and was like, "Were you Caddy Woodlawn?" And it was a great feeling, but I certainly have not gotten that very often. And as an agent, every single day was rewarding, because I was really able to facilitate other people's dreams, which is my goal in life. And I guess one moment that stands out to me, and I always kind of botch this story, but I was signing somebody. I was a commercial agent. So the beautiful thing about being a commercial agent is you could go to a grocery store and I could say, "Zeki, you have a great look. It doesn't matter if you have no credits to your name. Let's get you a headshot and let's get you out there." And that's like how it used to be. You know, you didn't need these prefab ready-made stars. Agents and producers and managers used to find people that had a spark, and you would help to make them a star. They didn't already have this like vicious cycle of already having to have credits. And so that's why I stayed doing commercials, because there was this opportunity of just discovering people and saying, you have a good look, you have a good energy, let's go for it. And at one point I was signing an actor who ended up, his name is Eric Lang. You can look at him on IMDb. He's gone on to do really incredible things. He played a theater teacher in Victorious, and then he just did like a huge mini series with Ben Stiller. But he was my client for commercials, and he was so precious. And he was explaining to me that I can't believe I'm going to get emotional talking about this. It's so weird. He would rehearse with his theater troupe in LA, and nobody sees theater in LA. And they would rehearse from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then go do their day jobs and be available for auditions. But that they just loved the craft so much that they would all get together at 6 a.m. to rehearse like Samuel Beckett plays that no one would see. And I mean, of course, they would try to get people to see it. They would do it at like 99-seat theaters. And I was like, oh my gosh. So you love what you do so much, and I can be a part of that. And you can book a commercial, which will hopefully free you up so that you don't have to rehearse in a basement from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. So even though commercials are thought of as like a mercenary pursuit, it can really be part of somebody's bigger picture of their career, and more important, of their artistry. So moments like that were what I love the most about being an agent.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
Also, Emily, I did find Caddy Woodlawn on YouTube, so the whole thing is there.
I've never Googled my name. I've never looked up Caddy Woodlawn. Well, I'm glad. Maybe we can start a Caddy Woodlawn resurgence, or maybe I'm gonna watch it and say, "Oh no, I totally had a misconception. I thought it was beautiful. It's a piece of shit. What the fuck?"
I was looking and I saw Katie's eyes get wide, and I was like, she is absolutely Googling this right now. I know the look of somebody on the hunt for information, and specifically Katie's look of on the hunt for information.
I was
on
gonna
the
check
cover
Disney
of the
Plus
book,
later.
and that was like the biggest deal for me, that I got to be on the cover of the book. They like did a
That's really
re-release of Caddy Woodlawn.
That's very, very cool.
That is pretty cool.
I want to sort of pop back, because you were talking about being an agent and the way that you're able to like help facilitate people's dreams, and I'm curious if you could explain to us like what an agent does, and then building off of that, maybe talk a little bit about like what it was like working with an agent when you were on the acting side versus what it was like being an agent, and maybe kind of compare the two experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. So being a talent agent, and this is for more than even just commercials, is you and your company, you have a stable of actors, and you really believe in everybody that you represent. And as an agent, you have access to what is ironically called breakdowns. And it would be really funny, because I would come home after a long day of work and say, there were 102 breakdowns today. But I didn't mean mental breakdowns. A breakdown is actually what a casting agent puts out, and it says what they're looking for. So it will say, we are doing, I'll use commercials as an example, but then I can also talk about what it would look like for TV and film. So for a commercial, it would say, we are looking for somebody for Dunkin' Donuts ad, and we need girls in their 20s that are brunettes that have a comedy background. And then every agent would go into their stable of clients. Who do I have who's brunette in their 20s who has a comedy background? And each agent would then submit their actors to these casting agents, hoping that the casting agent would say, oh, I'll take Katie DeMatteis, I'll take Kristen Wiig, I'll take this person, I'll take that person. And then a good agent won't just submit their talent, but will pitch their talent. We'll get on the phone and say, I will stake my reputation on Katie DeMatteis. You must see Katie DeMatteis. And the same thing holds true for TV and film. But TV and film will often have somebody attached to the project already. So it will say something like, needs to work well with X, Y, and Z, or needs to already have a following or a fan base. And so the stakes would be a little bit higher on the TV and film world, as where commercials, it would just be an energy or a look. And then as you move up the chain to feature films, the stakes get even higher, and they need even more of a insurance policy that you have a good resume and that there's directors that can vouch that you're not difficult on set, and that kind of resume backing to make sure that this person is going to be able to do their job, do it effectively, and sell tickets or get viewership.
That's super interesting. I had not thought about it that way before, or like really, I don't think I've ever even heard about sort of like those pieces talked about like that.
The breakdown services is so interesting because when I started, I'm old, it was this ticker tape machine, and it would go, and we would all wait for the breakdown to come out. And something else that's really interesting is it's very different depending on what coast you're on. So I started out as an actress on the West Coast, but my first experience as being an agent was on the East Coast. And on the East Coast, you do not have to sign exclusively with an agent. You get to freelance. So what that means is as the breakdown comes out, the agent gets the piece of paper that says, we're doing a commercial for, I'm just looking at the dog food in front of me, for dog chow. And we need, 45-year-old redheaded moms. And so an agent would say, oh my gosh, I know the perfect 45-year-old redheaded mom. But then they would have to clear you before another agent submitted you for the project.
Oh, interesting.
And so there's all this and then there's some casting directors that would call their top 5 agents and say, hey, look, you guys have the best stable of kids out there. And by kids, I just mean people, because I never worked with children. And so they would give you the first chance. They would give you the first dibs at going and clearing the actors. As we're in LA, you need to sign with an agent. So I would always say, and so this is to go back to one of your questions, Ben, about what it was like as an actor with an agent. I always advise, there's this idea that these actors are jonesing to get representation. But I would always tell my actors, and I still tell my students today that want to pursue acting professionally, without any ego involved, the agent gets 10% of the money. So that means you're doing 90% of the work. So the agent is actually somebody that the actor hires. So without being an asshole, and by staying humble and realizing that there's a lot of reciprocity, but you should never go into a meeting with an agent like with your dick in your hand, like, what can I do for you? It needs to be like, what can we do for each other? It really has to be that way. And a good agent is going to respect that. A good agent is going to respect that an actor says, look, I want to see if you're the right person to put on my team.
That's really interesting.
Symbiotic relationship, a lot of trust between an actor and an agent, because it should never be a power dynamic of, oh, well, you need me. You definitely both need each other. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So going back to LA for a minute, you mentioned having less of a freelance opportunity, and signing more, continuously with somebody. People think that being a star, especially at a young age, is super glamorous. What was it actually like in reality growing up on set? I mean, you mentioned before, like, not having a lot of these childhood experiences, except for whenever you got to do this Disney movie and learned how to horseback ride and everything else. So if that was the case, like, what was it really like growing up on a set? Like, what was school like? What was like, how did that even work?
I mean, I will say the disclaimer is that I do believe that we are all a culmination of our experiences. And I'm not wealthy and I'm not always happy, but I am truly doing everything I always dreamed of doing. So I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth. And I don't want to completely just shit on being a kid actor, because it is all led to where I am today. And I have 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. I have a loving husband. I'm working with the children, the population that I want to work with. I'm teaching, I'm directing, I'm doing those exercise classes. Like it's bizarre how much I'm doing everything I always wanted to do. So I do want to say that first as a disclaimer. But if I am to be honest, the life of being a kid actor was just incredibly arduous. The pressure that was on me was insurmountable, and a lot of it was the I was aware to a certain extent that I was contributing financially to my family. And so that was an odd dynamic. And I mean, I was also delusional about it as well. I really didn't understand to the extent of the corruption that was happening to all of us kid actors. And I have a really funny sidebar story about that, which is that it was Scott Baio of Charles in Charge fame who came up to me one day while I was in the makeup chair and was like, "Hey, do you know where your money is going?" And I was like, "You're so cute. You're from Charles in Charge." And he was like, "No, seriously, do you know where your money is going?" And I was like, "I have no idea. I don't know what I make or anything." And he was like, "You should look into that." So he was like this weird prophet in disguise. But other than the Scott Baio tangent, I mean, I didn't know the specifics of what I was making or how much was going into my parents' pockets. But I there's this bizarre interview of me on Entertainment Tonight from like 1987, which I forever thought was Precious Kids. And I thought it was like this very sweet expose on like the precious kids. And then years later, I found out it was Precocious Kids. And somehow that just, I was crestfallen. I was like, I just wanted to be precious, not precocious. But there's this very bizarre interview of me where I say, I love what I do. I would do it for free. I don't think my dad would let me do it for free, but I would do it for free.
Oh,
And it was like
God.
this really creepy, oh yeah, I knew something was
Oh,
going on.
God.
Oh boy.
So there was that layer to it. There was definitely this ridiculousness. My character on Small Wonder wasn't even able to step inside the house for the whole first year. The whole gag was that, like, if you Google for, I have done this, if you look up a GIF like door slam, it's me getting my face slammed on a door. Try it. It's true. You'll see it.
Oh, my God.
So that was like really hard on my ego. Like, people didn't think that I had feelings, that they were like laughing at me. And also, I was supposed to have like a crush on this kid who was constantly like, not Harriet. It was like super humiliating. So I internalized a lot of that. And then just the logistics to your point, Zeki,
Mhm.
it was a lot. I mean, I went to school on set and I had an incredible studio teacher. So that was a positive, but it was intensive schooling and then right on to the set. And then you could bank your hours. So the rules, I think these rules still exist. You had to do 15 hours of school a week and you had to do 1 hour a day. So I could bank my hours. So I could do like 6 hours one day. And then so for our filming days, I would only
Mhm.
have to do 1 hour of schooling.
Yeah.
That was just kind of jarring. I will say, again, on the positive side of things, now that I have seen that there are assholes and angels everywhere and that going to middle school is fucking atrocious.
Oh
And
man.
there are
Yeah.
horrible stage parents on the
Fucking
soccer
worst.
field. And my daughter's a competitive dancer and I see these dance moms. Like I see that there's not this binary of like kid actor bad, normative childhood good. You're never going to be spared from like all of the atrocities of childhood. They're going to find you. I think what the difference is the corruption of the finances and the corruption of the celebrity. I think that being homeschooled might have been the track that I should have been on. Maybe I would never have lasted through actual middle school. But when you're talking about thousands of dollars going into your parents' hands, when you're talking about your image being used and you having no say in it in perpetuity, right? Because I'm from the 80s. So like I there's going to be images of me that are out there forever that I have no control over. All of that stuff tweaks it and it makes it damaging. So the day-to-day life was arduous and there was a lot of pressure, but it's the residual factor. It's that how do you assimilate into real life? I didn't go to real school till I was 13. And I didn't just go to school from being like a homeschooled kid. I went to school with this reputation and with everybody being able to imagine if home videos of yourself were public and everybody
I would,
saw you going through your most awkward phases.
I would highly
And
prefer not to.
right. And I mean, and so that was the nightmare. That we're like, how do you matriculate into regular school? How do you assimilate when it's not just you're coming from this blank slate, you're coming from having your whole life, which is not your life. It's a representation of your life, or it's a depiction of a character. And like all of that is not authentically who you are, but that's what you're judged on. So it was very difficult transition.
Yeah.
And it's not a surprise why all these kid actors end up fucked up. What the fuck?
And were things on set socially? Did they feel? I mean, now that you have at least a couple kids who have gone through middle and high school, did it feel similar to going through quote unquote normal social stuff as a preteen and a teen, or was that sort of environment different just because of the nature of what was going on?
Yeah, so I'm conflicted because I had such wonderful experiences, but they were all with adults. And so I did not have any peer I shouldn't say any, that's too extreme. I had very few peer interactions. And I was just telling my daughter today, my childhood best friend was Candace Cameron of Full House fame.
Oh,
And I completely what the fuck that relationship, because I was always like, are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? Are you mad at me? I didn't know. We didn't go to school together. We were actually like pen pals, even though I lived in Beverly Hills and she lived in the Valley, but we would like write each other letters. We didn't have school chum relationships. I did not know how to navigate any peer relationships. I did have some incredible guardian angels that were adults in my life that are still incredible figures. But it took me a while to calibrate. And it's not lost on me the irony that when I was a teenager, all my friends were in their 40s. And now that I'm in my 40s, I spend all my time with teenagers. And I'm not saying that those are my closest friends, but I definitely spend my most time with my students. And so that's, again, good or bad, completely informed by the fact that I had a normal adjacent childhood.
yeah. I mean, that definitely, it's interesting because I don't think that, I think it would be a lot harder to just like go to middle school or high school and have those really close relationships with adults, because it doesn't facilitate that. If you're super close with your teacher, that can seem a little bit creepy, as opposed to like, this is someone who I work with and we have more of like a familial bond. So it's cool that you got to have that growing up, because I don't think a lot of people do.
Correct. And I do look at it as an attribute and not a negative aspect of growing up in the business. But there's certain things I don't know how to. I work at a boarding school. It's a 24/7 operation. And I'm such a brat. I refuse to go into the dining hall. And I schedule, my daughter helps me out. She's like an intern there, so she can attest to this. I schedule when I walk into my classrooms counter to the bell schedule, because I find walking in a class in the hallways in between the shifts of the classroom, I'm like, how do kids do that? It's a social minefield.
Yeah.
Just stop and I'm like
man.
I'm so fucking awkward every time when I do walk in the hallways when the bell changes. I'm like, hi, and I feel like the lamest person in the world. I'm like, shut the fuck up and just go to your class. But then when I do that, then they're like saying hi to me and I don't know what to do. And I'm like hugging the side of the hallway. So now I just purposely arrange that I get to my classroom, like I said, counter to the bell schedule. So there are definitely some deficits. But again, I know that there are also attributes, and I try to tell my own children, whatever it is you experience, you will be a culmination of the good and the bad.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like we've talked about this a little bit, but I'm curious if kind of, you were in Hollywood ostensibly for 30 plus years of your life, whether as an actress or as an agent. And I'm curious if you've come across some, like common misconceptions that the general population has about the industry. And if you are interested, maybe debunking a couple of them.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, one is very basic, but that the life of a kid actor is somehow glamorous, or that you are treated like a queen and you come away unscathed. So I think that's certainly one. But on the representation side of things, um, and we touched on this before, but I would love for actors to know that there's never an agent or a manager or a relationship with a producer or a casting director that's going to make you impervious to doing the work with integrity. I think that there's this concept of, oh, I just signed with this agent, so now I'm good to go. Or I have a relationship with this, or I just booked it and now I have a series and it's getting picked up for 3 years. I can rest on my laurels. Showing up and doing the good work and being a fucking good person and a professional is really important. Little things like if you leave your wardrobe on the floor for the costume person to have to hang up, that's going to get you at some point. You might not think it will, but I promise you, a production team in the future is going to say, you know what? I heard that they really were not nice to the costume and makeup people. It's going to get you. And so being a good person and doing the work with integrity and artistry is always important. And I think young actors need to hear that. And I also think older actors who feel like, oh, my career is set. It's never set. If you want to continue to grow and evolve, you got to do the work.
Not to quote another child actor, but to quote Will Wheaton, just don't be a dick. Like, it's that
Don't
easy.
be a dick. And I love Will Wheaton. And my older brother, who started all of us in the business, did a movie with him called you guys are gonna have to IMDb it. It was a Neil Simon movie. It was with Marsha Mason. And it's like about divorced parents or something, maybe Richard Dreyfuss. And Will Wheaton is this like main kid in it. And my brother had a really small part in it, Josh Schulman. But I love Will Wheaton and he's incredible. And so Will Wheaton and, I'm going to forget her name, Allison Stoner.
Oh, yeah.
Allison Stoner, who was a huge Disney star. They're doing a lot right when it comes to sort of explaining and revolutionizing the way that people look at the industry for children.
And are there any, I guess, sort of like on the agent side, are there any misconceptions that that you've run into, or that that are, I don't know, maybe just like generally sort of like, I don't want to say common knowledge, because if they're wrong, then they're not common knowledge, or they're just a common misconception. But I'm curious if there's anything that you've run into in your time where you're just like, actually, that's totally wrong.
Headshots is always such a controversial. You need one great headshot that shows all the different aspects of who you are. So people will say, like, should I wear straight hair? Should I wear curly hair? Do I wear makeup? What do I wear? Just all you need is a picture that is, and by saying all you need, it's a tall order, but you need a headshot that is representative of the multitudes that you contain. It doesn't matter if you have curly hair or straight hair. It's about an energy, and you want the casting director, when your agent submits your headshot, you want that casting director to be able to glean an energy from that headshot. Oh, and here's another thing. Speaking of gleaning, people think it's about what you look like or who you know. Those are, especially if you're talking about the commercial industry, they watch the audition tapes on fast forward, and they don't stop for the person who looks the hottest. They stop for the person who is the most present. So the audition process, it is an obstacle course in self-composure and self-esteem. You go into a room and you're looking at 1,000 people who look just like you. So that right there makes you feel like a piece of shit. Then you're supposed to be connected and committed to your material. but you're sitting not in a room that is supporting that, right? It's much easier to get into character if you're on set and you're in the costume and everyone says, quiet on the set. Ben's about to do his monologue. No. You're in the waiting room where people are actively trying to psych you out, but you still have to be present and connected. So what gets you the job 99.9% of the time, and this is not just for commercials, this is actually mostly for film and TV, is if you can be really present when you get into that room or when you're doing like a self-tape, just be present. That if you are, so a lot of times you go onto an audition, you meet with the casting director. The casting director films the audition, and then they take it to the next level, which is the producers. And as I said, the producers will watch that tape on fast forward and they'll stop when they see somebody who is so grounded. It's energy work, it's body work, and it's all that like cheesy meditative yoga bullshit, actory yoga stuff, but it really works. Like you need to be in your body and in the story, serving the story. And if you are present, that is what's going to get you the job.
That's really interesting. That also, I will say that last chunk there segues beautifully into the question that I have next sort of on the list here, which is what advice would you have for someone who either wants to get into acting? I think that's a phenomenal piece right there. Or you know, on the flip side, who wants to get into becoming an agent?
Well, I'm going to start with the latter because I think more people should know how rewarding being an agent, manager, even a casting director, which is a different track, but all of these careers that support actors are incredibly rewarding. If you can help somebody on their path to fulfilling their dream, and then you realize that the value of entertainment is priceless, right? We learn that every day. When we're sad, we listen to music. When we console ourselves through literature or streaming a TV show. The value on any sort of entertainment is priceless. And if you can help somebody to create that content, it's like, you know, a ripple that it's like a rock that you throw into a lake, and those ripples, you have no idea where those ripples are going to go. So not to get too lofty or poetic, but I really think that the value of the people that support talent, I would love to put up, I would love to advertise those careers more. My husband is a creative careers director at Yale. And so this is more his wheelhouse, but there are so many below the line or behind the scenes occupations that are really rich and really rewarding, which are about supporting, being a patron to the arts and supporting artists of all kinds. So I would love for young people to know, if you love the entertainment industry, or if you love being an actor, but you decided it's just a little too risky to just get your headshots and you don't want to have a life of waiting around for auditions. Like, think about supporting actors, think about promoting actors. It's really fun. And there's no job that's devoid of creativity. That's incumbent upon us to imbue any role that we have with creativity. So if you're a talent agent, I had so much fun getting on the phone with casting agents and saying, you've got to see Katie. Let me tell you why you've got to see Katie. And you develop your pitch with a lot of, it's not propaganda, but it's, you figure out a way of highlighting somebody's talent in a really creative way. Or as a talent agent specifically, you are part of, you are dealing with so many different facets of the industry. So you need to be able to be authentic, but curate your personality, so that if I'm talking to Zeki and Zeki is a producer for that dog chow commercial, and I know that you work for an advertising agency, so I'm not going to talk to you just in creative, lofty terms. I'm going to talk to you about the bottom line. I'm going to tell you that I know that your demographic is 18 to 25-year-olds. So I want you to see Katie, because her TikTok channel right now is off the hook. So if you want to get those 18 to 25-year-olds, hire Katie. But then if I was talking to somebody who's doing, a period piece that needs somebody that, you have to switch gears and you have to be able to speak a different language to a different casting agent who might be working on a different project that has, it's a short film that they need people who, have Shakespearean training. So I could say, Ben was homeschooled, but he grew up doing Shakespeare. Wow, that's so cool. So you want to know as much information you can about your talent. And then you have to be able to creatively pitch them. And that's something I miss about being an agent. I really miss that.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And that's a lot of stuff you wouldn't think about. And I guess it we've been doing a really good job tonight rolling right into the next question. But like with that kind of thought process going on, especially maybe in a post-COVID world where we're living, where everything has been digitized and crunched up and jammed into gigabytes, so everything's getting sent to one another. What would be some of those most important traits to be successful in the entertainment business, Hollywood, etc.?
Well, specifically, and disclaimer that I left the business right when streaming started. So I left the business, gosh, I'd have to think about the exact year. Well, it was like 2009, something like that. And my husband and I did it we had a concerted effort to leave right when the industry was changing. We saw what was coming down the pike, and it was kind of a prescient move on our part to get out before everything was digitized. But to answer the question, and let me know if I'm getting off track here, but I'm friends still with all of my actors from LA, and I do know that everybody is doing these self-tapes. So you need to be able to have a setup kind of like what we're doing right now. Voiceovers, and I know that you've had people that are experts in this field on this podcast already, but you do your own demos and you get your own studio at home. And some of that is a great gift to an actor, but some of it makes it more difficult because you have to be your own coach, you have to be your own engineer, and that's difficult because you just want to be a creative entity, and suddenly you're having to do your own marketing and your own editing and your own downloading and all of that stuff. And then I have a very dear friend who is 20 years still out there hustling, and he will send me his self-tapes and for me to give him feedback on them. And it's sad. He's having like his girlfriend read the sides off camera. She's a school teacher. She's not an actor. And he's like giving his like all, and she's okay today. It's like painful. And I feel bad for him because he just wants to go and be back in that waiting room and have that palpable energy, which can be difficult, but also fuels you to do your best at an audition. Mm-hmm. So I think that whatever it is, like I remember when cable TV, I mean, this was really aging me, but when everybody was like, cable is going to ruin the industry. And then it became that cable made us have all this brilliant new content. We have to be adaptable. We have to be primed for evolution. Artists, that's what we should be doing as artists anyway. And I know I'm using that term and it's kind of silly because we're talking about the industry, but I actually think it's really important to remember that's where it all starts, right? Somebody wanted to express something. Somebody wanted to connect to somebody. So remember that artistry, and remember that artists have had to withstand far worse than COVID. And stay limber, stay malleable in the right ways, stay have your convictions, but be able to adapt. I think it is always going to be the survival of the fittest. And so it's easy to point fingers at technology. And I actually am one of those boomers who completely hates TikTok and don't understand it. And my daughters are like, watch this TikTok. And I'm like, no, I refuse. But I also understand that we have to be able to hold space for that as well. And I think there need to be enough of us out there that say, don't listen to only 30 fucking seconds of the song. What the fuck? Listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
Right? Am I right, people?
It's completely changed the entire music industry. Look at how many records are put out now compared to just singles or like 2 or 3 song EPs. It's made me very sad. And
it is sad. It is sad. But instead of just wallowing in that, there has to be a way that we absorb and appreciate the changes and are smart enough to figure out how the fuck we can bring integrity to the next wave. And it's not easy, and it's certainly idealistic. But if each of us individually find a way to navigate through that world, I mean, story is always going to matter. People are always going to want content. People are always going to want story. So that, 15 seconds, it kills me. My kids have they don't just listen to the 15 seconds of the song, but it's sped up like a fucking chipmunk. What the fuck is that? What the fuck? I can't handle it.
Oh my God.
Yep.
But at a certain point, somebody's going to go back to the source and say, oh my gosh, when you take that song and you listen to it as it was originally constructed, even if it's the parent who's telling that to the kid, as long as there's somebody who's a bastion for the artistry, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, so last month we had a good friend of mine on who is a casting director, and we talked to her a little bit about this. But I know that she was not as clear because she's working on the casting side and kind of trying to dig into the differences between someone who's a talent agent and someone who's a manager, and why both of those roles are important. And I figured that you would probably have a more fleshed out answer and be able to dig into it a bit more than she was, just due to the nature of what you did for so long. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about those two roles and how they work together, and what they really do.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of minutia, but the big picture is that an agent is under a SAG contract, and they have to follow very specific rules in terms of submitting on certain projects, which I mentioned, those breakdowns. And that's really their job. They get the breakdowns, they submit the actor, and then they negotiate the deal with the producers once that actor is cast in a role. And they have very specific functions, and they are regulated in terms of how much money they can take. They cannot also be producers. I can't have a conflict of interest by saying I'm the agent that represents Katie, but I also want to try to produce something, and I'm going to loop Zeki into it, and I'm going to loop Ben into it. Like, there's regulations around being a talent agent, and it's very specific. A manager, on the other side, has a much broader scope. The manager puts all the pieces together. So the manager works with the agent. The manager works with the lawyers. The manager works with the PR person. The manager looks at the bigger picture in terms of the actor's career. But the manager also is not, and you could fact check me here because I have been out of the industry for 10 years, so things might have changed. But the manager does not have the specific regulations that an agent has. So a manager can be a producing partner a lot easier than an agent can. And I know that there's loopholes there, but that is like the big macro picture of it, is that the manager can be a producer, can oversee more, as where the agent is the one that actually has access to those breakdowns and actually does the direct submitting of an actor on a project.
Interesting.
Huh, very cool.
That's thank you for the clarification, because I know that that's a thing that has been a hot topic over a couple of different episodes. We're like, we're actually not 100% sure what the difference is and how to delineate it explicitly.
Yeah, what is the nuance there?
Yeah,
So
right?
thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Sort of speaking about agent stuff, this really has flowed very, very well. When you were,
It's like we're getting good at this.
Crazy. When you were an agent, how did you get new clients? So, do you accept? Did you accept cold submissions? Do cold submissions work maybe more generally? What are what's that process like?
Awesome question. Okay, so
I
when
do
I
have
worked,
to say, Emily, I
Yes.
remember coming into your office when I was like maybe 9 years old, and you just handed me a pile of headshots, and you were like, "Throw the ones out you don't like, and if you see any you like, give them to me."
Oh,
I was
totally.
like,
And
oh God.
I'm afraid that my own kids are listening to this right now, but we used to do some incredibly raunchy, disgusting things to some of the headshots that were submitted. I mean, it was unbelievable. There was a trend. There was a trend in headshots where everybody did an open mouth smile. And so
I
I
mean-
just fill in the blanks. Let me just say that's what we did to these headshots. And
You filled in those blanks.
we filled in those blanks, and we had a folder of open mouth headshots. And I will only just take a tiny little tangent to say that I didn't go to college. My college years were spent at a talent agency where I had more fun. I mean, the amount of side splitting giggling that we would do, because one thing, which is also a misnomer or a misconception, is that you cannot imagine the hours that a talent agent works. We were like, and we also thought we had such egos. We actually felt like we were emergency room technicians. We were on the clock constantly, and we worked on commission. So we were like kids eating canned corn out of a colander for dinner. We wouldn't leave the office. I mean, it's so gross. I remember peeing in like Solo cups at my desk because I was so afraid of like missing a phone call.
Oh my
We
God.
were
Feels
like
a lot.
just hustling beyond. And I'm like a real dork when it comes to drugs. Like I never did any drugs, but there was an era where my colleagues were like doing cocaine off of like little marble tablets, like on their desks to stay awake. I never touched anything. I'm like a complete like prude with all that shit. But anyway, like it was really that environment. Like we just were nonstop. And we had so much fun, but we had this open mouth picture file that when we were feeling incredibly giddy, we would take out these pictures, and it was just really raunchy and really silly, and you can just imagine.
Oh
But
my
anyway,
Do cold submissions work, and how did you get clients?
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
so
go to an open mouth smile, apparently.
Yeah. Or do
So
and make it
when
respect
I
the
started out interning for a woman. You can Google her, and I was just emailing her today. I'm gonna get all the clamped. Her name is Abby Bluestone, and she's incredible. She represents very, very famous people now. She's, I think, at ICM. What's her face with the big eyes, who was from Mamma Mia, who just won the Emmy? Amanda Seyfried, whatever her name is. She just won the Emmy for the Elizabeth Holmes series, and she thanked Abby. And so Abby was my mentor and one of these women who was like a guardian angel in my life. She was my agent. She was also a former kid actor, and I really am getting verklempt. She could tell that I really didn't want to be a kid actor. She could tell when she met me that if one other person told me to like hide my freckles and lose 10 pounds, I was going to lose it. So she actually took me in, and she taught me the ropes of being an agent and helped me fall in love with that process. And I just sent her a picture because my oldest daughter graduated high school yesterday. So I just sent her a picture of all my kids, and we had this incredible email exchange. When I started working out for her, and she was already a very successful TV and film agent for kid actors, she would not ever just do a blind submission. She would not go through those headshots. And Abby, you could fact check me if I'm wrong, but this is how I remember it. She was referral only. So those managers I was talking about, they would call her and they would say, Abby, you've got to see this young girl. And then she also, like, she discovered Julia Stiles, and she would go to conventions, and she would go to workshops. And that's a whole other thing that we could talk about, which are these actors workshops that happen in LA. I don't know what they are right now post-COVID. They were a little scandalous because there would be a fee that actors would pay to meet casting directors and then get material and then do a showcase where agents and managers came to watch you. And so that was a little sketchy that they would have to pay to be seen. But then there are also a lot of colleges do workshops. So I found a lot of students that are clients that way. Like Carnegie Mellon is notorious for having one of the best ones. They would have these actor workshops, and you would go scout talent that way. When I became a commercial agent, we were pretty exhaustive. We would look everywhere. So back to my story of being in the grocery store and saying, oh my gosh, Zeki, you have a great look. You should do commercials, or you have a great energy. Would you ever think about doing this? And when you were in LA, a lot of times those people were looking for representation. So it was easy to go fishing for that. But at Acme Talent and Literary, we did a thing which became really famous in town called a Super Saturday. and we would dedicate an entire day. We would not stop. We would start at like 8 in the morning until 5 p.m. And it would be blind submissions. It would be the people that would send in headshots, and we would have them come in and do cold readings for us. And it was sort of a cattle call, but it was also, we tried to bring integrity to we tried to be humane about it. And a lot of agents ended up emulating what we did. And because it was so difficult during the week, we were so busy trying to get our current stable of clients jobs. So we never had opportunities just to meet with new actors. And so once a month we would have a super Saturday. And when I became a wife and a mother, it definitely was unsustainable because it was a very long day away from my family. But when I was young, it was so much fun. We would just spend all day, and the actors would come in, and they were scheduled in 5-minute chunks, and they would do their cold reading. And we would see, probably without exaggerating, like 70 people in that day. And we would almost 10%, we would always find like 10% of the people that we saw, we would end up signing as our clients. And out of that 10%, it was like a mathematical equation. Like half of them would go on to be strong bookers and money makers for us.
Wow.
That's awesome. What I loved about my years as an agent was being able to, again, find people and help them who did not already have, as I said, like these prefab ready-made resumes. So it depends on the level of the agency and the medium that they're working in. A TV and film agent that has a high standard and already has a strong stable, blind submissions very rarely work. You need to come in by a referral. You need to be seen. You need to have a good reel. You could submit something. You could do a student film that gets a lot of buzz. Do those 99-cent theater or 99-seat theater plays and hope that a scout comes to see you. It's really one of those things where as an actor, don't be a dick, and also just do as much as you possibly can. Don't limit yourself. If it's getting your work out there, if it's producing your own material, every avenue, as much as that you can, you find exposure with integrity, and you'll find somebody who believes in you. But how I found my clients was a variety of ways. I had that freedom. That's why I stuck doing commercials. But as you move up the ranks and you do TV and film, it is more about referrals or going out to those workshops and showcases and finding talent that way.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. Briefly, you touched on why those Super Saturdays couldn't work anymore. But what else kind of made you step back from the LA Hollywood lifestyle to work with kids like you are now?
Oh, it was my own beautiful children and wonderful husband who made me realize that industry was going to suck the life out of me. And it's very ironic because I am now in an industry that also sucks the life out of me. So I definitely have an attraction to lifestyle careers and all-consuming relationships with the people that I'm trying to support. So that's a me issue, and not just and probably informed by my years of being a kid actor. But the difference is, sure, I probably would have been wealthier if I stayed in LA, but there really is and this is a negative thing to say, and there is a corruption in the industry that makes it harder and harder to stay connected to those pieces of like serving a story or helping that Eric Lang guy who was still doing his 6 to 8 a.m. theater rehearsals. You get swept up in the mercenary aspects. And so specifically, I will tell you a little bit about it. One is when I had my first incredible daughter, I wanted to prove that nothing was going to stop me. I wanted to prove that I could be like just as powerful of an agent. And I really prided myself on like my clients thinking that they were the only client and that I was always there for them no matter what. And my husband and I have this great story of me calling one of my clients who I won't mention names, but she actually went on to be quite successful. And I was like, okay, well, I just want you to know I'm going in for an emergency C-section, so I won't be available. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So tomorrow, curly hair or straight hair?
Oh, come on.
Unbelievable. And my
Oh,
husband, who was
wow.
like, this beautiful man with like a lot of integrity, he was like, oh gosh, this is not going to work. How are you going to be a mom and deal with these kinds of questions? So that was one thing that happened, was that like my first child, I wanted to be this like super, I can do it all. By the time I had my second child, I was like, fuck that. That's not romantic. That's just masochistic. Like I want to be a mom. I don't just, and I brought my husband and we were so ahead of our time. He was like a stay-at-home dad before that was trendy. And I was like pumping my tits full of milk and nursing and pregnant and like, and the chutzpah. I was literally interviewing people while I was like nursing and pumping. Like, who the fuck did I think I was? Like, I was so trying to do it all. And that was wearing thin very quickly. But the other thing that happened was that my mom and pop shop company, where we were doing these open mouth raunchy pictures and laughing like college kids, got bought out by a much bigger, fancier agency. And on paper, it was like living the dream. I had this huge palatial suite. I was looking out over Leno. I think it was Leno who was still there at the time. It was right in Burbank. And again, on paper, it was great. I was no longer on commission. They were paying me a really nice salary. They promised me I could bring my kids to the office, but they were the partners. Every time I would be hustling and hustling, the partners would walk by for the 5 seconds that I was having a tea party with my kids. And I felt that the bottom line became so much more important. And they wanted me to start doing celebrity campaigns, because watch commercials right now, team. Look at how it's all fucking celebrities, not just Super Bowl. It's all celebrity endorsements. Again, we left right when it was like streaming and celebrities. We could see that the type, oh, I'm such a weakling. It makes me so emotional, but we could see that the type of work I was trying to do and the fun that I was trying to have, the curtain was closing rapidly on that. And so I did it. I had an incredible friend of mine, actually, Tony Award winner, Marissa Jarrett Winokur. I got her, she was the girl from Hairspray, and I got her this huge campaign for diapers. And it was like this 6-figure campaign. And it was like, because I loved her and we started off together as kids, it felt rewarding. But I was like, if there's this pressure on me just to broker celebrity deals, that is about as far away from what I want to do as possible. And if the partners are walking by when I'm having a tea party with my kids and giving me the side eye, and I can no longer make a raunchy drawer file of open mouth pictures, like, what am I doing? So Derek and I did something super crazy, and we left the business. It was 2008. It was in like the big crash. We sold our house at a fucking loss. I think we're still trying to recover financially from it. But we just knew. I mean, Katie, you remember that house. It was a little tiny bungalow.
Yeah, I
A
do.
$1 million house. It was a little tiny bungalow. And we sold it. We lost money on the sale. And though we're still trying to recover from that financially, I don't regret it for a second. It was absolutely time to leave. And even though a lot of the dynamics of like an all-consuming job and trying to wrestle between my ambitions of being a mom and a facilitator of the arts, all of that still exists. I don't regret it for a second. I love having 4 seasons on the East Coast, and I love not being part of Hollywood. I was born and bred in that system, and though I don't look a gift horse in the mouth, and I'm proud of where I am. That's not an industry that I want to raise my children in. That's not a world that I wanted to perpetuate my involvement in. And I knew, I could tell it was time to leave.
I mean, I feel like that is like the right time when like family has to come first and foremost. But I also like, and if you can't speak on it because of whatever professional obligations you have right now, I totally understand that. But did the previous writers strike and then the kind of subtle, not so subtle move into the cash cow of reality television also like kind of signal that to you as well? And then did that play any kind of role into how you went about your business at the time and everything else?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. And I mean, it was sort of like a creative apocalypse, right? There was also a commercial strike that happened in 2000 that created a divisiveness. And it wasn't like a sexy strike. Nobody heard about it, but it created this very big chasm between union work and non-union work. And there were not union commercials for almost 9 months. So it was decimating. People were living off of residuals, which is how commercials are paid, which I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that. What happens when you book a commercial is there's different categories. A national network commercial is what people want to book or people wanted to book. And what that means is that commercial runs nationally and you get paid a certain amount for the first time it airs. And then depending on what market that commercial airs in and how many viewers are in that market, you get paid per play. So
wow.
if it is back when network TV was actually a thing, let's say you would get paid $100 every time your commercial ran on that Thursday night of Seinfeld and Friends, every single time it played.
Yeah.
And then if it gets played in a regional market, you get $10 because that's the viewership. It's like subscribers. It's that kind of thing. And it was a really intricate system. But once streaming came along, it was all about buyouts. So it doesn't matter how many times you see the fucking commercial for Progressive Insurance, they're going to give you a buyout. But the downside of that is if your commercial for Progressive Insurance runs every commercial break and you're only making a flat rate, you're not going to be able to get other work because suddenly everybody's going to say, oh, that's the Progressive girl. And they're not going to want to hire you to be in bigger, deeper projects that aren't about Progressive. So it's all of those things that have to get factored in. So for me personally, the commercial strike was a signal that the industry was going to change in ways that were not going to make it as sustainable, as mercenary, as rich financially. And also just kind of, it's just shitty. It's just like a shitty turn for the business to take. In terms of reality TV, that's a really interesting trajectory because yes, that was horrible. But what also happened is that you had things like Sopranos and you had all these incredible shows coming up on cable, which became, now you have Ozark, or I mean, everything like Game of Thrones, all of it, like fill in the blank. So there was also a time of rich content being built because of all of these new streaming networks. So yes, reality TV hurt a lot, but it's not to be eclipsed by the fact that there's also is this era, this golden era of television, which was also like little mini movies, and it was Mad Men was coming out at that time, all of that. So it wasn't just that there was a dearth of material with reality TV. It was also the way that the commercial financial structure was changing. That was for me more personally a reason to leave the business.
Got it.
That totally makes sense. This is a little bit of a change in gear, sort of backwards, but I am curious, as someone who grew up basically on a set. Do you think that growing up and sort of starting your career at a very young age is beneficial or detrimental to the longevity of an actor in the business?
There's a really healthy amount of successful actors right now, I believe, that started out as kid actors. Someone was just telling me about that, like Scarlett Johansson and like a few others that all started out as kid actors. I will say that being a working actor as a kid can lead to longevity. Being a child star or celebrity will never pan out. Or I shouldn't say never, but very much less frequently will pan out because the machine of being a celebrity is again so corrupt and so corrosive to the spirit that it really doesn't lead to longevity of anything. It doesn't lead to longevity of mental health. So a kid like Scarlett Johansson was doing theater and maybe some commercials and maybe a guest spot on a show here and there, but she wasn't part of a whole machine. And I think being a part of the machine when you're younger, even if it's led to longevity for few and far between, I don't think is ever a prescribed recipe for success. And I think it's really important to make that distinction. I didn't take an acting class my entire life. I knew how to step on a mark, but I didn't know anything about process or character study. Nobody cared to nurture me on that at all. And so without that nurturing, I certainly would not have been able to make a segue into being a successful actor. And then being a successful human, I can attribute some guardian angels for coming in and saving me from going down doing cocaine on that Marble Black route, amongst other things. But yeah, it's the celebrity machine is never the way to go. But if you can find a way, I mean, again, a good parent can bring integrity to any situation. Being a kid is hard. I see the missteps that I've made. I see things I could do better. I certainly see my parent peers who, like, again, my daughter's a competitive dancer. My son is, regional. All of it. It doesn't matter what your kid does. You'll see asshole parents make the wrong choices. A good parent can save you. The problem is that if you have a parent who is susceptible to greed or susceptible to pride, you have an industry that supports fucking with the children, and a parent's not going to know better. There's no continuing education courses for a parent to decipher when a producer, I mean, for instance, Caddy Woodlawn, which I just touted as like the best experience that I had, they also were coming up to my mom and the studio teacher constantly asking them to extend my hours on the set, which is completely against the law. And I would be there, please, I really want to do another scene. Please, I really want to do another scene.
Oof.
And of course, my mom, wanted to play along. And they've done a better job now having social workers on the set that say, no, you'll get that shot tomorrow. This kid needs to go home and get rest. But when I was growing up, that advocacy wasn't there. And it was really difficult to understand. Of course I wanted to stay and play pretend a little bit longer, but I also had a team of people that were dependent upon me to make the shot. And so without having proper advocacy and being really part of a machine, that's not going to lead to longevity. That's going to lead to a mental breakdown.
Wow.
No,
That wasn't me crying, by the way. That was you crying.
I think it's really amazing, given the environment that you grew up in, that you are just the stellar human being that you are.
10 out
and
of
that
10.
you came out of that and were able to do the self-care that you needed to do and heal in the way that you needed to heal, to be a very like healthy and smart and compassionate and caring human being.
I mean, you use the word dearth in casual conversation. I don't know what more we need to say. I almost interrupted to be like, can we just take a moment to appreciate the use of the word dearth?
I like barely made it through high school, guys. I got my diploma sent to me in the mail. So
hey, look, if there's one thing I think we're learning as sort of like as a culture, large, on like a broad scale, it's, how you do on a standardized test has no indication whatsoever of how you're going to do in life. And I want to sort of take a step back from the heaviness of that previous question, because that was some heavy shit. And I want to ask a more lighthearted question to sort of round out the evening here and find out what your dream project is. Whether it's big budget or working with your high school kids, or maybe a big budget production with your high school kids. Is there like one thing in particular, like, okay, if I could do that, that would be, icing and cherry, all
I'm doing it. I'm doing it every day. And it's really a bizarre realization.
That's amazing.
I'm truly, I'm doing theater. I also run like a literary magazine for my school, and I get to do all this writing, and I am teaching these fitness classes. As an overweight 46-year-old in that dark room, I'm trying my very best to administer love and care to my family. I have good friends, as evidenced by my time with you guys right here. And so I don't. Again, it's not like I'm saying I struggle financially. I struggle in so many ways. My house is a mess, and I wish I had a live-in housekeeper. I'm not saying that it's like a happy ever after ending, but in terms of doing the work, I'm doing all the work I ever dreamed of doing. Truly, I just closed, was just cleaning up sets today. I just closed a production of Othello, And I saw Othello with my high school boyfriend when I was 14. And I said, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. And it was a very circuitous route to get here. But like, I just did Othello with these kids who are struggling. It's a therapeutic boarding school. They have across the board struggles, which, so many young people do. But it's a fascinating school. And it's afforded me the opportunity to, again, feel like I'm, without stroking my own ego, but it feels like I'm doing the work towards a good purpose. Art is a salvation and an expression, and great acting and great storytelling can save lives. And I know that sounds super lofty, but I believe in it. And so I'm just a conduit for it. I just sit in a room and try to bring good energy. And I'm not being disparaging when I say that I don't have a lot of skills, right? Like, I'm not crafty. I don't paint sets. I've never taken training in Chekhov or Shakespeare. I just love life, and I love what I do. And I sit in a room, and I know that I share my energy. And if you do that and you're generous, these people bring that back tenfold. So I don't have an ambition. I don't have like a dream project. I'm really content with, I wish there was more time in the day, but I feel really proud of all of the different endeavors that I'm grateful enough to be a part of right now.
That's so wonderful.
That's a spectacular answer.
Yeah.
Especially hot on the heels of a very heavy answer to a
they go together, right? I mean,
they do.
Yeah.
They do.
My best friend is one of my best friends is my sister, and my baby sister who's a writer, and we always talk about like hope and despair are, bedfellows. And so I definitely feel that. And that's why I don't begrudge any of the atrocities of growing up as a kid actor, because I know that they led me right to where I am.
That's
amazing.
life.
And I'm sitting here talking to you all, and that's really fun and special.
Yeah.
With the camera off. And I got to make that decision and own that decision.
Hell yeah.
I love it. I love it.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, that is the end of the questions that we have for you. Thank you so much for joining us, Emily. This was really a wonderful conversation, and you are, as always, a ray of sunshine in everything you do.
Wow, way to totally steal my comment, Katie.
Well, I said it first.
I'm a dark cloud when I come home to a messy house. Let me tell you guys that.
Boy, can I relate to that. Katie and I got back last night. We're like, oh.
Hope and despair.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much. I apologize if I was too like verbose. I
No,
really
not at all.
appreciated
Not
the
at all.
opportunity to talk about these things and to talk about myself. That was really lovely. Thank you for giving me that opportunity and that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy to do that. It was wonderful getting to hear, because we've talked a little about your experiences previously, but it was really wonderful to. Wonderful is maybe not the right word in all the context, but it was, I don't know what the right word is. I feel very privileged to have been able to take part in the conversation. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I would just say I think every single one of these interviews so far has brought like a very hopeful and positive outlook to the entertainment industry, and shedding some light in areas that may have had shadow cast over them for the people you don't see on the red carpet and everything else. But I feel like this interview had a very special like energy, and I really appreciate you coming out today to do this. It meant a lot to all three of us. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
Feeling is mutual. Thank you again.
And with that being said, until next time, I'm Katie.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Zeki.
And this has been How the Fuck.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone?
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Zeki.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.